Motors built for speed, lives on the 4th floor, we're in the basement.
Yes, my office, tenant
Where the
speaking.
marionettes hang waiting for wet hands to step in the limp end. Fuck the fashion show.
cLOUDDEAD were an experimental hip-hop group from Cincinnati, Ohio, who existed from 1999 to 2004. They were Dose One, the stage name of Adam Drucker, and Y, the stage name of Yoni Wolf, and Odd Nozdam, which is the stage name of David Madsen. And on the last one, Nozdam is Madsen in reverse, I noticed. They have released 8 singles and 2 albums, and then they decided to call it a day. Hi, my name is Dan. So this was the first album by cLOUDDEAD, and it was my first encounter with them as an entity in any sense. And as I normally do, I listened twice, and even after 2 listens and reading up about them in between, I'm still not really sure what to make of this, which is in some ways is a good thing, I would say. So it's hard to describe, and it's certainly hard to give you the full idea of what the album is like just from 2 clips of it. I normally do a clip at the beginning, clip at the end. I'm going to have interesting time choosing what those clips might be. I think it could possibly be described as experimental hip-hop or avant-garde hip-hop. I'm not really sure if there's a difference between those 2 terms. Apart from the fact that you spell them differently. So the first track has ambient pad soundscapes with quiet drum loops and rapping. And some of the tracks are like that, except there's not all of them are. There's all sorts of different things going on here. There's at times there's noise, there's noises, there's snippets of conversation, there's supposed phone calls. There's definitely sound effects here. There's dirty drum loops. There's all sorts of samples. There's a lot of crackling and dirtiness on some of the things that are looped. The rapping is okay. So I've heard enough rap now to say that it mildly reminded me of Outkast, but actually it's more like singing at times. And they do an interesting thing in that sometimes when they're rapping, it's possibly the same guy who's doing it. They've done it a few times and they've not had it exactly in time with itself, and so they play it back. So you get 2 or 3 versions of the same thing happening. I have heard a similar effect before, but I haven't heard it very often. And then sometimes they have singing in harmony, and there's even times when you might say it sounds almost choral in the way that it is done. It's just, it is really hard to pin down. And a lot of people, the stuff that I've read, also find it really hard to pin down. It's generally agreed that it's some form at some point there's some reference to hip-hop because there's drum loops and there's rapping. But I think I would say it's not just pushing the boundaries of hip-hop, it's about 3 steps removed, at least, I would say. But it's definitely pushing the boundaries of what actually might be music, in that some of it is just sounds. And this is okay. Lyrics are generally odd. It feels like the lyrics are about just anything they felt like talking about at the time. There's a bit at the end I quite like, which is about the mystery of how a bicycle works. And that's the kind of thing that they address, but all sorts of stuff. It doesn't feel like there is an intention to make the lyrics in any way deep or meaningful. And in fact, that feels like part of the point. And another thing about it as a whole is that it jumps about a lot and it just kind of moves suddenly from one thing into another thing. It doesn't have strong structure in any way. In fact, it's very kind of bitty in that sense. And it's a bit like, well, I'm going to describe it as a mess. It's a bit like, a dumpster with a whole lot of rubbish in it. I'm not saying that everything that they're doing is rubbish, but it's that kind of disorganized feel. And I think, or I'm pretty sure, that that's entirely deliberate, that it's got this kind of slightly unsettling feel of not really ever settling down to anything and just keep moving on. So it's definitely experimental. In some of the stuff that I read, Frank Zappa was referenced as a similar thing. I don't know if you're aware of Frank Zappa and his experimentation. I've heard a reasonable amount of it, and I would say that although this has some similarities, the kind of overall, I hesitate to use the word tone when I'm talking about music, but the overall kind of feel and the tenor of it is somewhat different. It doesn't have quite the same absurdist approach as Frank Zappa does. It's absurdist in its own way, I think. And then it comes down to this question: did I enjoy it? And the answer is, I'm not really sure. Kind of. I might have to listen to it a few more times to work that over. I think it wins me over most hip-hop by not being normal hip-hop and by breaking a lot of the boundaries of hip-hop. So, yeah. I would definitely say it's not a background album. And I would say that it's probably being entirely successful in what it's setting out to do, which is to be experimental, to push the boundaries, and to be different, noticeably different. And it's definitely that. So if you like stuff that's experimental, you might really like this. If you like hip-hop, you might really like it, but you might really hate it. So who can say? That's what I thought anyway. It was kind of all right. But it's pretty odd. What do you think? So please talk to me through the comments box. That's it from me for now.